In times of war, social media stops feeling like a casual place to scroll. It starts feeling like a live, nervous system feed. You open your phone for a quick update and find yourself pulled into images, opinions, arguments, and urgency that make it hard to look away. Even if you're far from the conflict, your body can react as if something is happening right now. Your attention narrows, your emotions sharpen, and you can feel both informed and overwhelmed at the same time. Research shows that under threat, people seek certainty and meaning quickly. War creates a level of uncertainty that the mind struggles to hold because the stakes feel enormous and the information feels unstable. Social media offers immediate access to updates, reactions, and narratives, which can feel like control. Psychological studies indicate that when people feel powerless, information seeking can become a coping strategy. The feed becomes a place where you try to reduce surprise, even though the constant stream often increases arousal instead of calming it. Social media also changes what truth feels like during war. In high-stress environments, the brain prioritizes emotional clarity over complexity. Studies suggest that simple stories travel faster when people are anxious because they reduce cognitive load. Social platforms reward speed and engagement, which means the most emotionally gripping content often rises. That doesn't automatically mean it's false. It means emotional intensity becomes a sorting mechanism. In that atmosphere, misinformation can spread not only because people are careless, but because their nervous systems are searching for a story that feels stable enough to hold. Another psychological shift is group identity. War pressure tends to sharpen us versus them thinking, and social media accelerates it. Researchers have found that when group threat increases, in-group loyalty intensifies and out-group suspicion grows. Online, this can show up as quick labeling, moral certainty, and pressure to signal allegiance. People may feel that silence equals complicity and nuance equals betrayal. The platform becomes a stage where identity is performed through the content you share, the side you defend, and the language you use. Even people who don't want conflict can feel pulled into it, because belonging starts to feel conditional. Social media during war is also highly social in a way that can increase self-monitoring. Psychological studies indicate that perceived evaluation raises stress responses, even when the evaluation is indirect. A person may not only be processing the war itself, but also processing how their reaction will be perceived. Should they post? Should they not? Should they say the right thing? Should they correct misinformation? Should they avoid it entirely? This constant internal debate can create fatigue because you're carrying both moral weight and social pressure. The emotional texture of the feed matters too. A wartime feed often mixes traumatic imagery, grief, anger, sarcasm, and political arguments in rapid succession. Studies suggest that frequent emotional switching makes downshifting harder because the nervous system stays in a scanning state. One moment you feel empathy, then outrage, then helplessness, then numbness. This can create a pattern where you don't feel one emotion fully before being pushed into the next. The result is often emotional congestion. You feel like you're feeling everything, yet nothing is resolving. Doomscrolling is one of the most common outcomes of this environment. It can look irrational from the outside, but internally, it often makes sense. Researchers have found that the brain seeks information under threat because it believes information equals preparedness. The problem is that social media doesn't provide enough. There is always another update, another video, another argument, another angle. So the nervous system stays activated while the mind keeps searching for the piece of information that will finally create closure. That closure rarely arrives because the feed is designed to continue. There is also a psychological phenomenon of vicarious stress. Psychological studies indicate that repeated exposure to distressing content can trigger symptoms similar to direct stress, especially when exposure is frequent and vivid. Even when you are not physically in danger, your body can respond to the intensity of what you're seeing. This can show up as sleep disruption, irritability, emotional numbness, or a feeling of being constantly on edge. Some people then feel guilt for being affected, as if only direct victims are allowed to feel anything. But the nervous system doesn't organize emotion by moral permission. It responds to repeated threat cues. At the same time, social media can provide real connection during war. It can offer community, visibility, and a place where people feel less alone. Research shows that social support buffers stress, and online spaces can become a form of support when other forms are limited. People find language to describe their fear. They find others who share concern. They feel witnessed. In that sense, social media is not only a problem, it's also a coping ecosystem. The complexity is that the same ecosystem can provide comfort and amplify distress, depending on how the feed is shaped and how sensitive the nervous system is at that moment. Moral emotion also becomes amplified online. Anger, pride, contempt, and shame can rise quickly because they create clear direction. Studies suggest anger can reduce fear by creating a sense of energy and certainty. In a feed, anger also performs well because it spreads. That can make wartime platforms feel louder and more rigid than real-life conversations. People can become less patient with nuance, not because they are inherently harsh, but because their stress system is seeking a clear frame to hold the chaos. A subtle consequence of all of this is how it changes your sense of reality. When your feed is saturated with conflict, the world can feel entirely defined by it, even if your immediate environment is calm. Researchers have found that repeated exposure shapes perceived norms. Over time, you may feel more distrustful, more suspicious, and more emotionally braced, because your brain is learning that danger is everywhere. This isn't about being naive or informed. It's about how the nervous system maps threat through repetition. A calmer way to understand social media during times of war is to see it as a system that compresses fear, identity, information, and social pressure into one continuous stream. It can educate, connect, and mobilize. It can also dysregulate, polarize, and exhaust. The behavior it produces often isn't about weak minds. It's about minds responding normally to abnormal intensity, delivered at a pace the body wasn't built to metabolize all day. If this felt relevant, you can like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who's noticed how different the feed feels during conflict. And if you want, drop a comment about what you notice most: doom scrolling, emotional numbness, argument fatigue, or the pressure to have the right reaction.